Okay, Peter, well, today I just wanted to talk a little bit about the upcoming Dubois-Joyce fight, which now looks like it is going to happen in October. And the reason I wanted to talk about it is I've been looking, as we've got closer and closer to this fight, the bookies' opinions have moved. We started off with a 50-50 fight, and now most of the bookies are installing Dubois as a 3-1 favourite, and I think that's a bad call. I can't really understand where they're getting this from, but I think there's a narrative that's going on, and a narrative that people are buying into, that Dubois is kind of the anointed one, the coming power in boxing. He's going to be the champ when Fury and Joshua step aside, or when they finish their reigns, and there's almost nothing that can stop him. And so, it's almost like Joyce is just seen as another one of these people that these contenders just sort of chew up and spit out. And I don't think that's the case. I think, to make my case for that not being the case, I think we need to go back a little bit and look at their respective careers so far and how they got to this point. And I think an interesting point as well is that the reason people are buying into this narrative, and maybe the bookies, is when you've got a 23-year-old with Dubois, banger, up-and-comer, walking through everyone, and then you've got a 34-year-old guy like Joyce, you think of maybe a more seasoned campaigner. It's generally the older guy is on the way down, the younger guy is on the way up, and they pair them up to give the younger guy a bit of experience. I don't think, again, that can be written into this scenario in any way. And let's just go back and look at their respective careers. So Joe Joyce was a late starter in boxing. He only started boxing at 22, believe it or not. He was a bit of a track and field guy. He got some injuries, and then he walked into Earlsfield ABC when he was 22 years old, and they were like, wow, we've really got something here, a real athletic specimen. And then he was very quickly brought into the GB setup. He went on to have a stellar amateur career. In 2013, he got a bronze medal at the Europeans. Then he went on to get Commonwealth gold in 2014. The Europeans, again, he got gold in 2015. And he capped his amateur career off in 2016 at Rio with that silver in the heavyweight division. Now, I think he was very unlucky to get silver. And I think, I can't understand how the judges saw that fight going for his French opponent. I think he should have had gold. But anyway, he came back, signed with Haymaker, turned pro, and he's had a solid run through the pros. He was matched with Ian Lewington in his first fight, who I think was something like 22-3, good solid pro. So they didn't start him off with the sort of bum of the month club. They started him off, with really sort of some hard guys. And it's been like that all the way through his pro career. I mean, for example, in Bernie Steverine, he fought in his 9th pro fight. Steverine was actually apparently quite insulted by this, that they would get a novice to fight him. Bearing in mind, Steverine, as we know, was the ex-WBC heavyweight champion, who lost to Deontay Wilder. So, but he did beat Steverine. He beat Steverine in his 9th fight. That was TKO round 6. And then in his 11th fight, he fought Bryant Jennings, another great name. Really good fighter, really solid guy. And he got past him on a 12-round decision. So, even though he's only had 11 fights, he's had 10 stoppages in those 11 fights. And they've been against solid opposition. So you've got to pair that with a really solid, stellar amateur career with a good, solid pro career and good experience. Now, he's only done 43 rounds. Interestingly enough, in Dubois' 15 fights, he's done 43 rounds as well. So Dubois walked through people a little bit earlier. He's only been taking the distance once as well. So out of those 15 fights, Dubois had 14 early stoppages. And his only distance fight was against Kevin Johnson, again, a very experienced American pro, kind of gatekeeper heavyweight. But Dubois' best win was probably against Nathan Gorman, who was 16-0 at the time, and that was for the British title. So that was a good guy who came to win, and Dubois was too much for him and got him out of there in the 6th, I think. But that's good domestic level opposition, and I think Joyce has more fought, obviously on the international stage in his stellar amateur career, and on the WSB in the amateurs as well. And I just think Dubois has been a bit more domestic. So you've got to line up their respective records. But also, if we look a bit closer at Dubois, and Dubois took the more conventional route. He started boxing at 9 years old. But the amateurs weren't really a massive thing. He had a couple of national titles, I believe, as a junior. He had a handful of senior bouts, and then went pro at 20. And then, because that was always their mindset, really, was to take him pro. And then his march through the pro ranks, I think, although he's had more fights than Joyce, I don't think he's faced, as I said, that higher level of opposition. So now they're coming in to clash together. And, also, I don't see Joyce as the older man at 34, because bearing in mind that he only started boxing at 22. So he's still fairly physically fresh in that sense, I think. And it's going to be very interesting, this fight, when they actually clash, because I think what's going to happen, I mean, Dubois has got this amazing power. So in a way, you're going to favour Dubois to go out there, assert himself, get behind that improving jab of his and bring in that right hand, that devastating right hand, which has seen him walk through so many people. But Joyce is a very canny operator. The best way to negate that power is just not to get hit by it. And I think Joyce can manage that for quite a while. And he's probably going to want to drag Dubois into deeper water, because later in the fight, I think these are the places that Joyce has been and Dubois maybe hasn't. And what's going to happen if Dubois does hit Joyce and he doesn't go anywhere, because he's a very durable guy. And also he's going to be hitting him back, which a lot of people haven't done to Dubois so far, because, you know, a bit like George Foreman in his early reign, you're so scared about those thunderous punches coming at you. You spend a lot of time just covering up and not throwing back. So, but, you know, Joyce is definitely going to hit him back. And also, as I was saying, I don't see Joyce is on the slide with this. Dubois coming up, Dubois seen as the sort of anointed one, Dubois seen as the next champ, all that sort of stuff. I think this is going to kind of annoy Joyce, because I think Joyce has never really got the recognition that he deserved. He was eclipsed slightly in the amateurs by Joshua. He didn't get that 2012 place because of Joshua. You know, coming into the pros, he hasn't had the really sort of stellar ride again that Joshua had, and he's been eclipsed by this great heavyweight era that we've got. You know, I mean, if we had a Joe Joyce, you know, 10, 20 years ago, we'd all be raving about him, you know, but because we're so sport for choice in the British heavyweight division at the moment, you know, we're like, oh, right, it's Joe Joyce, oh, he looks quite good. So, you know, I think Joyce, again, is going to see Dubois getting all this attention, getting all these odds over him, and think, do you know what, I'm going to have a bit of that. I'm going to make a mark here. I'm going to show you who I actually am and what I can actually do. You know, so in a way, it's a bit of a breakout, coming out fight for him, or coming out opportunity. So I really think that, you know, that there's a lot to play for both of them in this fight. I know it's Dubois, you know, seen as his natural ascension, but I think Joyce is a serious juggernaut in the way, and I think he will come very much to win. He will hit Dubois back hard. He will be able to take his shots or negate his power. So I see it as a really 50-50 fight. And also, I think what we've got to think about for both guys, what's on offer. Now, in a way, we've already talked about Dubois is just seen as this is the next stepping stone. And if he's going to challenge Joshua or Fury, or if it seems more likely, because as we talked about last week, the three kings are tied up fighting each other, he's going to come along and is seen to be able to clean up the division after their reign. You know, that's his natural progression. Is he going to miss the Fury, Joshua Wilder era, or is he just going to catch on the tail end? And maybe get a few good wins there, and then it's Joyce. Does this catapult Joyce up in? And let's also talk about Dubois if he loses. If he loses, he can rebuild. Definitely rebuild. He's only 23. You know, we may say Joyce was a lot better than we thought he was. Maybe it was the wrong time. So he's going to rebuild and come again. That's maybe the same opportunity for Joyce to rebuild at his age. So again, we've got to look at that. Maybe be an extra motivation for Joyce if he really wants it. He's got to take it now. Because Joyce definitely wants to knock on that door of Fury Joshua. He is not waiting around. You know, he wants those fights, and you know, he wants to get in that mix. I mean, conveniently enough for him, the other leading contender in this amazing crop of British heavyweights we've got, Dillian Whyte, has kind of been sidelined now into his rematch with Povetkin, although he was knocking on the door. So again, maybe that's an opportunity for Joyce to come through now. You know, if he can beat Dubois, he can be the leading guy saying, come on, you know, I mean, give me a shot, you know, against those old amateur rivals or those old amateur teammates. So I think there's a lot to play for both guys, but I think particularly for Joyce. You know, he's got a great opportunity to go somewhere if he wins. He's going to be in a bit of a cul-de-sac if he loses. So I really think that's extra motivation. Another reason I'm saying this is a great fight, a great 50-50 fight with two very motivated guys. And unlike the bookies, I think I'm going to say the experience that Joyce has that people aren't really looking at, the motivation that Joyce has that people aren't really looking at. Dubois, although he's great and he's powerful and he's young and he's going to be champ one day, on this occasion, I'm going to disagree with the bookies. I'm going to go down to bookies and take some of their money because they're saying 3-1. I think it's a great price. So I'll have that from you, and I'm going to lean towards Joyce in the later rounds. I think that's where it becomes his fight. Joyce on points or Joyce after round 9.